Your nephew gets your apartment.
He's getting married, Dad said, handing my brother the spare keys I'd given them for emergencies. You can crash on our couch, Mom added. I just nodded and left. 2 days later, they showed up with a moving truck. The building manager stopped them. This property belongs to a trust. You're trespassing. When they called me screaming, your nephew gets your apartment, he's getting married, my dad said it like he was announcing dessert. We were standing in my childhood kitchen on a Sunday at 6:12 p.m. My mom had the oven open, heat blasting her face, acting busy on purpose. My brother Kyle leaned on the counter with that relaxed grin people have when they already spent your money in their head. Dad held up a small ring of keys. My keys, not even subtle, the same spare set I'd given my parents for emergencies 3 years ago when I bought the unit. Kyle reached for them like they belonged to him. Mom smiled too wide. You can crash on our couch for a bit, she added, looking at me like I'd be proud of my own displacement. I just nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why my name wasn't even mentioned in the decision about my property. I walked to my car and drove back to my restaurant. Hands steady on the wheel, mind already doing what it always does. Inventory, levers, who has access to what? Who has... At 7:03 p.m., I pulled into the back lot, sat in my truck, and opened a note in my phone. Change of access, trust manager, locks, documentation. That's when I decided to stop being their safety net. 2 days later, at 9:18 a.m., Kyle and my nephew Evan showed up with a moving truck, and my building manager stopped them cold. Gentlemen, he said, calm as a librarian, this property belongs to a trust. You're trespassing. At 9:26 a.m., my phone started blowing up. At 9:27 a.m., my dad left a voicemail that began with a scream and ended with, "What did you do?" And at 9:28 a.m., I stared at the screen and realized something simple. In their version of the story, I was the obstacle. In mine, I was the owner. Not revenge, just boundaries. My name is Brandon. I'm 41. I'm a chef, which means I work while everyone else is eating, celebrating, relaxing, or pretending their choices don't have consequences. I'm an executive chef at a mid-sized restaurant group in the city. 6 locations. I run 2 kitchens and consult on menu development for the others. My title is fancy, my work is not. My days start at 9:30 a.m. and end whenever the last prep list is finished, the line is cleaned, and the last quick question is answered. I'm the guy who knows where the extra box of gloves is and how to fix the walk-in when it starts making the wrong sound. Outside of work, I'm the spreadsheet guy. The guy who reads contracts, the guy who sets up autopay, the guy who thinks if we just plan better, this won't be stressful. And in my family, that translated into a different role. I wasn't Brandon. I was Brandon will handle it. Kyle is 2 years younger than me. He's charming in short bursts. He's great at big promises and terrible at follow-through. He's been between opportunities so many times. It's basically his brand. Evan is Kyle's son. He's 24 now. Not a bad kid at his core, but he grew up watching his dad get rescued. So, to him, rescue feels normal, like gravity. My parents love both of us. I believe that. But they respect one of us. Guess which one? When I was 33, I got divorced. Nothing dramatic. No cheating. Just slow drift. Different lives. I bought out my ex's share of our condo and moved into a smaller place above my first restaurant. A year later, I bought a small 4-unit building, one of those older brick places with creaky stairs and solid bones. It wasn't glamorous, it was smart. Purchase price $612,000, down payment $122,400. Mortgage $489,600 at 3.75%, 30-year fixed. Monthly payment with escrow $2,986.14. 3 units rented. 1 unit I kept empty as a future option. An office, a landing pad for when I got tired of the restaurant noise, a place where silence was allowed. That empty unit became the center of my family's imagination. When I bought it, my dad slapped my shoulder and said, "Mark, look at you, you're set." My mom said, "You're so responsible." Kyle said, "Man, must be nice." Tom, it started small like it always does. Can Evan crash there for a weekend? He has an interview, he can't afford hotels. Just until Monday. I said yes. I gave my parents a spare key for emergencies because my dad liked to check on the place and it felt easier than fighting. The first weekend turned into 3. Then Evan got a new job and needed a month to save up. Then Kyle had a fight with his girlfriend and needed a reset. And every time my parents framed it the same way, family helps family, which sounds noble until you realize it always flows in one direction. I didn't even mind helping at first. I'm not made of stone. I've cooked extra meals for the staff when someone's car got repossessed. I've paid a dishwasher's phone bill because his kid needed surgery and he was panicking. Helping isn't my problem. Entitlement is. The first real crack happened on a random Thursday in March. I got a call at 10:47 p.m. While I was closing the kitchen. Kyle's voice was loud, casual. "Hey, quick thing. Evan's going to stay at your unit just for a bit." I said, "Who told you that was happening?" Silence, like I'd asked a weird question. Dad got on the phone. He told me, "It's fine. Don't make it a big deal." The thing that bothered me wasn't Evan staying there. It was that my own father talked about my property like he was assigning seats at a dinner table. I drove over after service. Midnight. Back door propped open with a trash can. The unit smelled like cologne and microwave noodles. Evan was on my couch, shoes on, feet up, watching something loud. I said, "Hey, I didn't know you were coming tonight." He didn't even pause the show. Grandpa said it was cool. I remember standing there thinking, is that how it works now? My permission is optional because someone else gave it. I told him calm. "You need to text me directly next time. If it's my place, it's my call." He nodded like I'd asked him to recycle. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my property insurance provider. "We have been notified of additional occupants at the insured address. Please confirm primary occupancy and update tenant roster." I didn't update the tenant roster because Evan wasn't supposed to be a tenant, but someone had listed him as one. When I asked my mom about it, she laughed like it was cute. "Oh, I just called them to make sure he was covered," she said. "You worry too much." I opened my laptop that night and started a folder. Building access and occupancy, screenshots, emails, dates, times. Because here's what nobody tells you about family entitlement. It thrives in vagueness. Make it specific, and it starts to die. Then came the wedding announcement. Evan got engaged to a woman named Tessa. Nice enough. Works in marketing. Always talking about timelines and vision boards. They wanted a wedding in 8 months, which is ambitious if you have savings. It's delusional if you don't. Kyle started calling me more. Not directly asking for money. Never directly. That would require dignity. He'd ask questions. "How much is it to rent a venue? You think an open bar is really necessary? What's a normal deposit for a photographer?" Then my mom started sending me links. "Look at this place. Isn't it beautiful? Evan deserves a good start." And then, like clockwork, my dad hit me with the line he always used when they wanted something big without saying it. "Well, you're the stable one." I had a policy with myself. I don't fund weddings. I'll give a gift. I'll show up. I'll smile. I won't become the silent sponsor of someone else's fantasy. So I said, "I'll contribute as a gift, but I'm not paying for the wedding." My mom's voice cooled instantly. "We're not asking you to pay." 2 days later, I got a notification from my bank app. A new request on my account. Add authorized user. Evan, last name. I stared at it like it was a prank. I called my bank immediately. The representative sounded concerned. "Sir, someone attempted to add a user using your personal verification questions. They had my mother's maiden name. They had my first car. They had the street I grew up on. Because my family had it. I changed everything that night. Passwords, security questions, two-factor authentication. I froze my credit. I didn't tell them, not yet. Because the pattern was now obvious. They weren't forgetting to ask me. They were testing the limits of what they could take without permission. And if I didn't draw a line, the line would be drawn for me. The unit became a talking point at every family gathering. 4th of July. My aunt asked, "So, Brandon, are you excited to have the kids in your place?" I said, The kids? My mom jumped in. "Oh, Evan and Tessa will probably start there, just until they get settled." I looked at her. "That's not the plan." She blinked, offended. "Well, it makes sense." There it was again. It makes sense. Not, can we talk about it? Not, would you consider it? Just, it makes sense. In their version of the story, my resources were family resources. In mine, my resources were the result of 70-hour weeks, burned hands, missed weekends, and saying no to things they said yes to. The erosion wasn't just financial, it was personal. It was the way my dad would introduce me to people. "This is Brandon. He owns a building." Not, "This is Brandon. He's a chef." Like the building was my identity. Like the building was the only reason I was useful. It was the way Kyle talked about the unit like it was already assigned. "We'll paint it after the wedding. We'll get new furniture. We'll swap the locks." He said that last one casually at brunch. I set my fork down. Why would you swap the locks? Kyle grinned. For safety, new chapter. My mom nodded. It's normal, honey. I felt something in my chest go quiet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel. I was just done. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed conversations like security footage. How many times had I mistaken confidence for love? How many times had I called it family closeness when it was really access? At 4:47 a.m., I opened my laptop and pulled up my property documents. And I found the lever I'd been ignoring. The building wasn't in a trust, it was in my name, which meant my family's access was entirely based on keys and assumptions. Keys I could change, assumptions I could break. On Monday, I met with an attorney named Denise who specialized in real estate and asset protection. I brought a folder, literally a printed folder with tabs. Deed, mortgage, insurance policy, emails about occupancy, screenshots of that authorized user request, a photo of the spare keyring in my dad's hand from Sunday because, yes, my cousin had posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Family helping family." Denise looked at everything, then looked at me. "You're not here because you hate them," she said. "You're here because they don't understand ownership." I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for a year. We set up a trust. Not because I was hiding assets. Not because I was doing anything shady. Because I wanted the building managed like an asset, not treated like a family timeshare. The Harrison Property Trust. Yes, my last name is Harrison. No, I'm not proud of how formal it sounds. Trustee. A professional trust company Denise worked with. Beneficiary. Me. Manager. My existing property management firm. Updated contract. We drafted formal policies. No occupancy. Without written lease. No keys distributed. Without trustee approval. No temporary stays. Beyond 72 hours without documentation. Any attempted forced entry triggers a trespass notice. Then I called my building manager, Marco. Marco is the kind of guy who wears a neat polo, knows every tenant by name, and doesn't get emotionally involved. Perfect. I told him I need to change access. He didn't ask why. He asked for dates and details. On Wednesday at 8 a.m., a locksmith changed every exterior lock. New deadbolts, new keyway, new building entry fob system. I paid $1,146. I have the receipt. At 8:42 a.m., I got a text from my mom. "Why isn't my key working?" Smiley face. The smiley face made my jaw tighten more than any insult would have. I didn't respond. At 9:10 a.m., I emailed my parents. "Spare keys are no longer valid. Please don't attempt to access the unit. If there is an emergency, contact Marco at the management office." Simple, professional, boring. Boring is a boundary's best friend. Then I asked Denise, what happens if they show up anyway? She said, then they learn what trespass means. I wasn't planning to destroy them. I was planning to stop letting them destroy me. The confrontation was inevitable. I just wanted it on paper, not in motion. And I knew exactly where it would happen because Evan's wedding timeline had a deadline. They were going to need the apartment for the start, which meant they'd announce it publicly and dare me to object. So I planned for that moment like I plan a Saturday dinner service. Prep everything, label everything, keep the heat controlled. The scene happened sooner than I expected. 2 days after the key moment at my parents' house, Kyle called me. He didn't even pretend it was a check-in. "Hey," he said, we're moving Evan into your place Friday." I was standing in my office at the restaurant staring at the prep schedule. I said, "No, you're not." He laughed like I'd told a joke. "Dude, Dad already said yes." I paused, not for drama, to make sure my voice stayed level. "Kyle, Dad doesn't own it." His tone sharpened. "So, you're really going to do this to family?" I said, I'm not doing anything to anyone. I'm managing my property." He hung up. Friday morning at 9:18 a.m., Marco called me. "Brandon," he said, "there's a moving truck in front of the building. 2 men. One says he's the father of the tenant." I said, "Do they have a lease?" Marco didn't even pause. "No." I said, then follow the protocol." I heard him exhale. "Understood." I stayed on the line. I heard voices in the background. Kyle's voice, loud, demanding. Evan's voice, nervous, trying to smooth it over. A third voice, my dad, arriving late and acting like he was in charge. Iving. Then Marco spoke, calm and clear. "Gentlemen, this property belongs to a trust. I can't allow entry without authorization. You are trespassing." Kyle snapped. "It's my brother's building. He said we could." Marco cut him off. Not rude, firm. "I have the trustee's instructions in writing. If you don't leave, I will call police for a trespass report." And then my dad's voice, angry. "Put Brandon on the phone!" Marco said he's not required to speak with you. My phone buzzed. Calls, voicemails, texts. Dad, call me now. Mom, what is happening? Kyle, you're actually sick. I didn't respond while I was still on the line with Marco. I waited until the moving truck started backing up. Marco said quietly, they're leaving. I said, thank you, please email me the incident summary. Already drafting, he replied. At 10:06 a.m., my parents showed up at my restaurant. Not in the dining room. They came through the back like they owned the place, too. My sous chef, Dana, looked at me with that, are we calling someone face? I told her, give me 5 minutes. We went into my small office. My dad didn't sit. He stood over my desk like he was about to fire me from my own life. What did you do? He demanded. I said, I protected my property. My mom's eyes were wet already. Brandon, why are you being like this? That line, why are you being like this? As if I'd woken up and decided to become difficult for fun. Kyle stormed in after them. Evan wasn't there. Smart kid. Kyle pointed at me. You embarrassed Dad in front of everyone. I looked at him. No one was embarrassed. They were stopped from entering a property they don't own. Dad slammed his hand on my bookshelf. Not violent, just loud. We raised you, he said, and this is how you repay us. I leaned back in my chair. The thing that bothered me wasn't you asking for help, I said. It was you giving away something that isn't yours. Mom whispered, it was just an apartment. I nodded. Exactly, just an apartment, and you still couldn't respect one boundary around it. Kyle scoffed. So what? You made a trust now? You think you're some billionaire? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Denise had told me to keep it simple, so I did. I slid one page across the desk. Certification of trust. Then another. Property management agreement. Then another. Trespass protocol notice. My dad's eyes tracked the papers. His face changed in slow motion. Not guilt, not understanding. Calculation. Mom read the first line and looked up. You did this behind our backs. I said, I did it because you were making decisions behind mine. Kyle laughed sharp. This is petty. I shook my head. It's not petty, it's structured. Dad tried a new angle. Softer. Brandon, Evan is starting his life. You have 4 units. You don't even use that one. I said, I don't owe my unused space to anyone. Mom's voice cracked. So, where are they supposed to go? I didn't bite. I didn't argue about their options. I just said the truth. They should rent a place like adults, where you can help them. You offered the couch. Kyle snapped. That was temporary. I looked at him. So was Evan staying in my unit until it wasn't. Silence. Dad's jaw clenched. In our family, we don't do legal threats. I kept my voice flat. In my life, I do paperwork when people don't listen to words. Kyle leaned forward. So you're really going to let your nephew start his marriage on a couch? I met his eyes, calm, cool. I said, then go join them. He blinked like he'd never heard someone say no without apologizing. I stood up and opened my office door. We're done, I said. Do not come to my workplace again. If you want to talk, you email me. Dad stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't, because the old version of me would have folded right there. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Not revenge, just boundaries. The next 72 hours were a greatest hits album of manipulation. Anger first. Kyle sent 23 texts in a row. You're dead to me. Dad's blood pressure is high because of you. You always thought you were better than us. You could fix this with one call. Then guilt. My mom left a voicemail at 11:38 p.m., whispering like she was in a hospital. I don't know who you are anymore, Brandon. Then pity. Dad emailed me a photo of himself sitting at the kitchen table with a handwritten note. Family is all we have. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a slogan. Then the smear campaign, lightly disguised as concern. My aunt messaged me. Are you okay? Your mom says you're having a breakdown. I replied one sentence, I'm fine. Please don't contact me about this. Marco emailed me the incident report. Time-stamped, objective. 2 individuals attempted access without lease, refused to leave initially, departed after trespass protocol stated. Denise sent me a follow-up. Good job staying calm. Do not engage in emotional arguments. Keep everything in writing. I blocked Kyle's number for a week. I didn't block my parents. Not because I was soft. Because I wanted documentation. I replied to my dad's email with 3 lines. I'm not discussing this in person. The unit is not available. If you attempt entry again, the management company will file a report. That was it. No debate, no emotional essay. Because they wanted a fight, they could describe to other people. They wanted me to look unstable, cruel, dramatic. I gave them nothing. At some point, Evan finally reached out, a single text. 2:14 p.m. on Tuesday. Uncle Brandon, can we talk? Just you and me. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my restaurant. He showed up alone, eyes tired, no anger, just confusion and embarrassment. He said, I didn't know they were doing it like that. I believed him. I told him, If you want a place, I'll help you find one. I'll even review the lease. I'll tell you what deposits are normal, what fees are scams, but you don't start a marriage by taking something that isn't yours. He swallowed. Dad said you promised. I said, I promised your grandparents a spare key for emergencies, that's all. He nodded slowly, like a child realizing his story was fake. Are you cutting everyone off? He asked. I thought about it. I said, I'm cutting off access, not love. If they can respect that, we can have a relationship. He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, I don't think they know how. That might have been the saddest thing anyone said in this whole mess. 9 months later, the building is still mine. Still boring, still solid. The trust runs smoothly. Tenants pay rent through the portal. Maintenance requests get handled without phone calls to my mother. I renovated the empty unit into a small office and a place for me to decompress after long shifts. New desk, simple couch, a cheap record player I found online for $85. I sit there some nights with a beer and let silence be silence. My finances are cleaner too. No family support line items disguised as kindness. No unexpected access requests. No panic calls about just bridging this month. Kyle and I don't talk. That's his choice. My parents send the occasional neutral message about weather or holidays, like nothing happened. In their version of the story, I betrayed them. In mine, I stopped participating in a system where my role was resource, not person. Here's what I learned concretely. If someone can give away what's yours without asking, they don't see it as yours. And if they don't see it as yours, they won't respect it until paperwork forces them to. I'm not proud that it came to that, but I'm proud I didn't explode. I didn't beg, I didn't perform. I just changed the locks, changed the structure, and kept cooking my life forward one day at a time. Not revenge, just boundaries. If you've been the stable one in your family, you already know stability attracts hands. Your job is to decide which hands get to hold on. The core issue isn't housing, it's ownership being overridden by access. Brandon is right to draw the line because his parents treated his spare keys as permission to assign his unit. Kyle showed up with a moving truck at 9:18 a.m., and someone even tried to add Evan as an authorized user on Brandon's bank account using family security answers. Dad drove the entitlement. Mom normalized it and acted behind the scenes. Kyle pushed the takeover while Evan sits in the middle. Less malicious, but still responsible for not confirming directly. The right fix is structural. Change locks and route all entry through a manager. Require written leases only and keep communication in writing with time-stamped incident reports. Also harden accounts. Two-factor authentication. New security questions. Credit freeze.